Let's put our cards on the table, shall we? The chances are, if you had a poor performance in a marathon, it is actually not down to bad luck. Because running is so well studied nowadays with so many scientific papers that there is usually a scientific reason for your poor performance. But the good thing is, there's also a scientific reason for good performances. So today we're going to look at the scientific literature around why you perform badly, and we're going to see if we can tweak it so that you can perform well. And look at what I've got! I've got the whole band back together. Everyone's here on an organised early morning wonderful run.
So we're going to spend this video looking at the available research and scientific data of everything that can affect your race, in the training and in the race itself, positively and negatively. And it's going to be really eye-opening, and I'm certain you're about to learn something that's going to improve your next performance, marathon or not. So swap me this. Good information here for subscribing to the channel and joining the crazy journey.
So what we're going to talk about first is critical volume, as in how much should you actually train, miles or kilometers, for a marathon per week. So here's the starting point, and this bit I'm sure will not surprise you, but in a 2020 study it was found that there was obviously a correlation between the volume that you run in the week and your outcome speed in a race. But there was a caveat, and we all love caveats, right? And that caveat was that depending on how fast your outcome time was for the marathon, that is what dictates how much volume that you should put in a week. Because let's be honest, a sub 3 hour marathoner is going to run a lot more volume in a week for the same time as, let's say, a 5 hour marathoner. So where the sweet spot for a sub 3 hour marathoner was 80 to 120 kilometers a week, and I'll put that in miles here, for a 4 hour marathoner it was actually more like 50 to 70 kilometers a week. And for a 5 hour marathoner, you're looking at more, I can't remember off the top of my head now that I'm running under duress, but I'll put it on screen. It's somewhere around the 40 to 55 kilometers a week mark. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, hang on a second, how can I be marathon ready on 48 kilometers a week? Well, I've got you there as well, because there was another study published that showed that runners who averaged 48 kilometers, just 48 kilometers a week, but every week for 12 weeks leading into a marathon, faced a significantly lower chance of hitting the wall during the race. And again, I already know what you're thinking. You're thinking 48 kilometers over a week with a long run. How does that work? Well, interestingly, another study on so-called weekend warriors showed that if you spend the majority of your weekend putting the volume in and not much across the week, you're at a significantly higher risk of injury. So you're much better off trying to average out the majority of your runs throughout the week rather than loading up on a weekend. And this is the point I bang on about a lot on the channel, is how long should your long run be? Well, it's actually not as relevant in terms of distance and more relevant in terms of time on feet, because it has been proven there are very diminishing returns once you go over 3 hours in your long run, but an exponentially higher risk of injury. So actually, if you're a 3 hour marathoner, you're probably going to get a good 35 kilometer long run within 3 hours. But if you're a 5 or 6 hour marathoner, you're probably going to get more like 25 kilometers. And that is okay, as long as we said before, you spread the rest of your volume quite evenly over the week and don't just load up on the weekend.
Now, first of all, you'll notice I'm not in the studio. We're on holiday and therefore I'm in a hotel room, but that should make no difference to what I'm about to show you. It's super interesting, I cannot tell you. So we've talked about how much you should train in the lead up, but what we haven't talked about is the training load. When should you train? What should you train? Basically, the adaptation window. When do the best changes happen within your training cycle? Actually, in a really recent study, 2025, from the universities of Virginia and Harvard, they did a study of around 1,000 Boston marathon runners, and they looked at those who performed the best. And it was very interesting to find out, actually it was the ones that put in quite substantial volume over 12 months in advance, rather than try to load up their biggest volumes 1 to 4 months out from the race. So it's a surprise and it's not a surprise, is how I'm looking at it. I mean, it's the longer that you do this and the longer that you put in good volumes, the better chance you're going to have on race day. But at the same time, that really shouldn't surprise us. I always think marathon cycles stack on top of each other and show increased fitness as long as you could maintain consistency. So really what we want to look at is, what does the evidence say about when you should be doing the big weeks? And this is the bit I love. So there's a lag effect. Whatever you do today probably won't give you huge benefits for 2 to 3 weeks minimum. That's the first thing you've got to know about your training. But there is also a sliding scale of how much benefit you will get from your weeks and your sessions. And if you look at this graph here, you can see that actually the biggest benefits, and so therefore the biggest reason to put the biggest volume in, is 4 to 6 weeks out from your marathon, whereas traditionally people possibly do their biggest week 3 weeks out. You're actually going to get more benefit 4 to 6 weeks out. And something that we do with a lot of our training community and our coaching community is we've built in what we call the reverse build block. So straight out of the recovery week, 6 weeks before the marathon, we do our biggest volume week. That is for people that have run many marathons before. I'm not suggesting you do this as a first-time marathoner, but we do the biggest week then, and then we dial back maybe just the long run a little bit each week and keep the volume still quite high. And we're having great success with it because the evidence is backing that up. It's scientifically based. So all you're doing is, if you do your big weeks, if you don't start your taper until 2 weeks out, what you're essentially doing is that you're racing on damaged rather than transformed fibers, and therefore you're not going to perform as well. So if you follow the science, and when you do the big weeks, you're giving yourself the best chance.
How about the taper? That's where we are right now, tapering for Tokyo. So it's been really interesting to look into the studies about what makes the most effective taper to have the best marathon day. First up, they found that the desired length of a taper was 3 weeks, with a slow, staggered decrease in volume to eventually get to 40 to 60% of your peak run volume. The frequency and structure of the running was maintained from 80 to 100%. So, for example, if you run 6 days a week, you keep running 6 days a week in the taper, or maybe 5, just dropping 1 day, but you're maintaining around the usual frequency of your runs. No dramatic cut. And here's the interesting bit, the cheat code, if you will. The intensity should remain. It helps to maintain blood volume and enzyme activity and keep you fresh and firing to perform your best on race day. So a good taper done right can increase your marathon performance by 2 to 3%, which, if you're targeting a sub-3 marathon, it's like 3 to 5 minutes.
Times are changing, and you definitely need to be up on the latest science of thermal load and heat adaptation. In 2025 alone, of the majors, Tokyo, London and Berlin were all unseasonably hot, affecting tens of thousands of runners' performances. And with global warming, that doesn't look like changing anytime soon. So you need to understand the process and know the solution. The key takeaway that won't surprise you is that if you're not acclimatized to heat, you've got to slow down, because pushing through, it isn't a matter of willpower, it's a matter of thermal physics. In studies in 2014 and then reinforced in 2024, it was found that for every 5 degrees Celsius, that's 9 degrees Fahrenheit, increase above 10 degrees Celsius, a 3 to 4 hour marathoner should expect a 2 to 5% performance drop. And that's going to be more if you don't account for it in your plan ahead of time. Weather's the main thing out of all of our control, and that sucks. But other than adjusting our pace, what can we do? Well, that's actually quite interesting. Heat is a performance limiter, but humidity multiplies that. So if you are in a hot and humid race, the sweat doesn't evaporate, it stays on your skin like a warm blanket or a thermal layer. In non-humid conditions, it should evaporate, helping you to cool down. So in humid races, you should actually wipe the sweat away yourself. And in non-humid races, you can let it evaporate because that's the body's main cooling system. I created this cool rhyme to remember. If it's hot and dry, just let the sweat fly. But if it's hot and humid, just wipe it off. Okay, that needs some work. Also, in hot conditions, black hats are not a good idea. Whoops. A dark hat acts as a thermal insulator, so white and ideally mesh is the way in hot conditions. And then a study in 2025 found that water consumed at 5 degrees Celsius is significantly more effective at lowering core temperature than water consumed at room temperature. And that might be the difference between the water that you carry with you on the course that's going to warm up because it's near your body, or water on the course given to you, which is often cold and refreshing. Ultimately, this is a race against the thermometer, not the clock. And if you remember that, you're going to do much better. Hello, Mikey.
Hi, Benny.
How are you?
Really well, thanks.
You have to hold it closer to your mouth.
Thanks.
There you go.
Got you.
So, this is a segment that I have decided to call Stun the Scientist.
Ooh.
Okay, so what people won't know about you is you have an Ironman in about 2.5 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to propose to do in this small segment is offer you some information that has been proven to improve performance by up to 5%. And I did the maths, because also, as well as being a scientist, I can do a little bit of maths.
Very good with numbers.
It works out at about 30 minutes on a 12-hour Ironman.
Ooh, that could be very useful to me, Benny.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good, I'm glad. Okay, so the information I'm going to give you is about a carb load. So actually, people enjoy the thought of carb loads because it just means you get to eat carbohydrates.
Yep.
But I think it might surprise you how much carbohydrates you have to eat. So I'm going to give you a number. So I reckon we eat around 200 to 300 grams of carbohydrates a day, probably on an average day, I'd say, in that region. How many carbs would you think a carbohydrate load per day, let's say a 2-day load, you'd need to eat?
I reckon I'd double it.
Yeah. Good call.
Is that the end of the conversation?
Game over.
Okay, that's easy.
That's a minimum.
Oh,
so,
right, okay, I was going high.
No, you've gone low.
Right.
So,
surprising,
right? So carbohydrate stats is for 2 days before you do an event, 10 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of your body weight. So for me, as a 63 kilo,
all right, yeah,
so
okay.
750 grams of carbs.
Oh, you do the maths.
I've done it.
You've just done it.
How good is that? Luckily, I picked
fast.
a good number, 10. So you would need to eat a minimum of 750 grams of carbohydrates per day.
Right.
For 2 days before your Ironman.
And what does that look like on a plate?
Well, good. I'm glad you asked. There's a very, very astute of you. So, what does that look like? Let's say, for example, a bowl of rice is 50 grams.
Okay.
So suddenly you're starting to realise
15 bowls of rice.
15 bowls of rice, 15 bagels.
Not sure I can manage 15 bowls of rice.
So let me do a test, because I've written down some other things to see if you could guess how many carbohydrates, grams worth, are in these. I've given you rice.
What's this game called?
Guess the carbohydrates in the foods.
Okay.
It's an original name, yes. Orange juice.
10 grams. No. Is that silly?
No, it's not bad.
Well 10 grams.
Oh, 20 to 30
20 to
grams.
30
okay,
grams,
so you
okay.
could have more of that.
Okay.
What about a big baked potato?
Oh, 50 grams.
Yeah, good. All right. What about, we've done bagel, haven't we? 50 grams.
50 grams.
So what about something like a Morton sports drink? So a branded sports drink that they create purposely for this type of thing.
I'd say 100 grams.
Not far off. You're good at this game. 80 grams in a drink.
Okay.
But what people don't realise, I think, is the sheer volume of carbohydrates you need to eat. In 2014, they did a study between people that freely chose their carb load and people that followed the scientific method of that I've just told you.
Yep.
And the difference in a marathon was 11 minutes.
Goodness.
11 minutes.
That's the difference between a really good day out or a disappointing.
Isn't it?
Yep.
Is the difference. And
Thanks,
thank you for
Benny.
playing the game.
It was a pleasure.
Definitely an area of marathon running where most of us fall down is understanding that there is actually a difference between target pace and critical speed. And I'm going to give you my Berlin race as a perfect example of the day that I did not distinguish between the two, and that was a critical error. So as easily as I can explain it, target pace is a fixed number. When I was running Berlin, I wanted to run a 3:45 per kilometre, because critical speed is, think of it as the pace that equates to your lactate threshold. It's the pace that is your steady state. And if you go above that steady state pace, eventually you're going to get yourself in trouble. Let's take Berlin. When I was in Berlin, I was training. My target pace was 3:45 minutes per kilometer. I wanted to run sub 2:40. Now in Thailand, my critical speed was about 4:05 minutes per kilometer. That's because critical speed varies for a number of reasons. One of them being heat and humidity, but you could also factor in tiredness, stress, fatigue, those kind of things. It's not a set pace, that's what I'm saying. And so 4:05 in Thailand was supposed to be 3:45 in Berlin. And so I went with that attitude. But there were two things that I didn't take into account that would crucially really affect my critical speed. One thing I could have done something about, and one thing I couldn't have known anything about. Firstly, I was ill. I had no signs or symptoms at that point, but my body obviously knew, and I was really, really ill on the Monday, the day after the marathon. Nothing I could have done about that. There were no signs. But the second thing, and the thing that blew my race up, was that Berlin on that particular day was so much hotter than usual and so much more humid. And I'd been in Europe for 3 weeks. I'd probably lost a lot of my heat acclimatization. And what I should have done is thought, oh, my target pace is a 3:45, but my critical speed on this day is probably closer to a 4:05. But I didn't. And you know what the irony of the difference was on race day is that if I'd have listened to my critical speed and I'd run about 4:05, maybe even 4:10, which is probably where I was at on the day because of the heat and the illness, instead of 3:45, I probably would end up running a faster time. As it was, I averaged about 4:12 a kilometre, 3:57, 2:57, something like that. I think I could probably have done faster if I didn't start out at target pace and I started out at critical speed. And that is what I think a lot of us don't appreciate. And some of it's ego, and it's a learning journey.
Okay, let's talk about pacing, because it's going to have a huge impact on your marathon performance and reaching your marathon potential. Going out too hard, blowing up and running a positive split is actually the most common reason for underperformance on marathon day. There is a gender gap in the ability to pace. Can you guess which gender does it better? Let us know in the comments. A massive study of over 1.3 million runners showed that men tend to start out at a faster pace than their current fitness justifies, leading to around a 15% slowdown in the second half compared to an average of 11% slowdown for women. And that is known as the ego tax. A separate study stated that world record performances and elite performances almost exclusively utilize even pacing or a negative split. So that's what we want to aim for to get the most out of ourselves on race day.
Hello, John.
Hello, Ben.
Welcome back to the channel.
Thanks, great to be here.
Great to have you. Okay, we're talking about fueling strategy in race, particularly in this part of the video. We're talking about marathons. However, you run ultras. We're going to get to that. I've even done a bit of research for you on that.
Oh, nice.
But you've run a 2:40 marathon, which is epic. Can you just quickly tell me, like, how often did you take gels within that effort?
To be honest, I can't really remember, if I'm absolutely honest.
That long ago?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. It was, I don't know how long ago it was.
It was 2021.
I'm glad you know that.
I remember, because you did it just before we moved to
That's
Thailand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that I did have a strategy, obviously, and I remember taking them routinely every, was it 5 or 10k? I can't remember, to be honest.
I reckon 5k. I'm going to guess 5k. 10k is going to push it out
That
to...
seems like a lot of gels to carry. I can't.
It might, yeah. Well, let's talk about gel strategy, because I'm gonna ask you some questions. So, what if a gel is around? They vary between 27 grams, 25 grams, and 40 grams. How much carbohydrate you should get in per hour?
3 gels. I mean, no, not per hour. That's ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous, John. I'm going to surprise you.
Really?
It is probably not even enough if you take 25 gram gels.
Really?
So the current research is between 90 and 120 grams of carbohydrates per hour.
Really? But what my immediate reaction to that is, surely that's going to make you buff. I mean, like, have they taken into account the gastro stress?
I'm glad you asked that. This is why he's a science teacher. He's following the evidence. So,
yes, the point is that if you did just do that on race day, no chance. What they have suggested and studies have shown is that if you train your gut week after week, you can absolutely absorb up to 100 grams, 120 grams of carbohydrates quite comfortably. That is the biggest thing that is the limiter of performance, is the fact that you don't train it before you try it. And the one thing I'm going to leave you with that might surprise you is what they've now found, which I quite like, is that your body can actually only absorb about 60 grams of glucose per hour, which is why the gels now are a glucose fructose mix, because you can absorb up to 120 grams because they have different transport pathways. So if you have a gel that is exclusively glucose or jelly babies, you're only going to get 60 grams. But the gels, you've got to look for a 1 to 0.8 ratio of glucose fructose if you want to get the most out of the gels that you're putting in.
Real food, I definitely think, whenever, I kind of run to feel though, whatever I think I can stomach. Normally your stomach tells you what you can have. Like if the thought of a gel makes me want to hurl, then it's probably not the thing I want.
Yeah, fair. Okay, well, good luck in your race. Have you noticed that in the background between us in the shot is a toilet?
I have now.
The whole shot. All right, good luck, John.
Excellent. Thanks.
That's it. Run done. Now it's time for shower and breakfast. If you like this video, I 100% guarantee you're going to like this one, which is a more in-depth look at in-fueling in race. And I ran a marathon just so I could bring it to you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that we can help you a little bit more, and it helps us as well. And this time next week, literally next week, we're running Tokyo Marathon, both going for sub 3. My 6th star, gonna be an epic one. See you next week.